Where do we see geometry in real life? Have you ever had your teen ask that? So here's the good part. We see it everywhere. You see it in art, you see it in crafts, you see it in video games. It's just part of our nature, so much so that we already know a whole lot of geometry. If you've ever taken somebody that sat there and tried to play billiards, and they naturally know how to hit the ball. Maybe they're not good at it, but they get the general idea of what they're trying to do is to hit something at one angle to make it go at another angle. That's all geometry, and we are all, as a matter of fact, it's geometry and a little bit of physics, or a lot of physics. We know that, we understand that. We have learned that through experience. And so we see geometry in all these different places, and so let's walk away from the textbook for just a minute and kind of explore some of the things that we see, because the hidden power of geometry is thinking visually. That's why it's actually an easier course for a lot of students, because it is more visual, and what we're trying to do is put some mathematical meaning and structure behind that to understand what we are seeing and be able to describe it and be able to use it in more powerful ways. So geometry teaches us how to see the world, how parts relate to the whole. We see that in any time we're building something, we are putting things together, and we have different parts that go together and they go into a whole package. Think about the spokes on the wheel, and there's so much geometry there, but they're individual parts pulling together and then moving on to a bicycle so it can perform a function. So it's not about memorizing theories. It's not about looking at the back of the book and trying to memorize all the theorems or the postulates. Those help us to analyze the geometry. It is about the visual elements is where we're going to see it. So students that might be sitting there rearranging their bedroom today or playing a video game today, in the rearranging the bedroom, they visually are doing geometry. Whether this, because it's tall, fits here. What is more functional, how it fits. Some things just don't fit together because there's a certain size of the room. They're doing this all the time. And man, if you've ever watched them play video games, and especially things like Minecraft, but probably any game that's a video game these days, is a lot of geometry that's embedded into what they're doing. So they're seeing it, and the geometry mathematically is part of building those games and those systems and that furniture. It is the important skill that got us there, even in designing the house. So we see geometry, it's visual, and while you're teaching geometry, keep it visual. That's why it has lots of different pictures in Harold Jacobs geometry and most any geometry. You have lots of different images and pictures of real world things, at least in Jacobs. Not all of them don't have real world elements. But you have crafts, you have beehives, you have planets, you have ladders, you have these things that we really see in the real world, and we're trying to put the geometry that goes with them. So keeping geometry visual, and as you are in the book, making sure, what does this look like? What does that mean? Can we visualize it, and can we even put it together and build it? The second thing in terms of use of geometry, though, besides our just pure visual, is real careers, where people are making money using geometry. And we're not talking about math teachers or researchers or engineers or anything necessarily like that. We are talking about architects, graphic designers, video game designers. So if you just look at a couple here that I've got in front of me, that I see specific things that come out from geometry. Trades, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, you have angles, you have measurements, you have blueprints. all geometrically based. Graphic designers, animators, coordinates, and a lot of kids these days understand. Again, with Minecraft and things, you have coordinates. With a lot of the software out there, they're doing coordinates. So that's built in. Scaling, rotation, even photography, as we think about taking images and we're editing them in one of our many tools. We are scaling them, we are rotating them, we are, and there's fancy, rotating, means something specific in geometry. Engineering and architecture, of course, in these we see structural design, 3D modeling, we see distance issues, so all those kind of things. Robotics and coding, so I'm actually helping with a robotics team right now for K through 12, and they're using robotics, and what do they have to do? Movement. How much movement? How far does it move? And you got to be able to translate between how many turns of that motor to get you so many inches further away. How far do you rotate? What's your angles? So again, geometry. And even in the sensors that are telling you things such as how far you are away or pressure and things like that, they become geometrical. Then you see, as I mentioned, in photography, in film, and in art. We see so much of it. And now I'm not talking about just our observation of it, but if you are in that profession where you are using these tools, the understanding of geometry, at least the visual elements of it, is critical to what you're doing. You need the geometry. It's just part of who we are. So geometry is connecting art and science and logic, something we're not even talking about here because that's not necessarily what we see. But it's kind of where creativity meets logic. And that's what we're looking at when we're looking at the course of geometry, and we see all of this every day, everywhere. So what if you're teaching this, and look, I get it, courses become boring, textbooks become stale and dry, no matter what you do to try to spiff them up. So you have to take your learning to the real world. So stepping away from just having the book there and saying, how can you make geometry the real world without fancy tools? And we do have fancy tools. You can get into things like, I think it's called SketchUp, and there's a school version of SketchUp, which is a very powerful tool for creating images, everything from drawing buildings to creating things that you might manufacture. There's Tinkercad, which is another one. So you might use a 3D design tool. These are 3D tools that allow you to design things such as a house, a tree house, or maybe just something else that you want to do, such as an invention, or maybe lay out your bedroom. So assigning things like this to your kids to do that is part of the course when it just seems natural. Say, let's, instead of doing this, let's go use a tool out here and do this. Maybe they want to build a scale model. So scale model is definite geometry and mathematics in there, but they might want to use cardboard or whatever. There's so many resources out there now. They can take photos showing parallel lines, showing symmetry, showing perspective. And of course, if your son or daughter is into photography, that's something they're probably doing already, because that's so much part of creating image. So if nothing else, go outside and look for shapes. All the different shapes that are out there, and there's all kinds of things that we see just in nature besides, we see triangles and roof lines, and we see circles and triangles and playgrounds, but we see things in nature such as the shapes of leaves and where the veins of the leaves go, where roots are. You see how the planets are moving. You see the movement of the sun, the shape of the sun, the shape of the earth. All of these things are based around geometry, and the textbook for Harold's textbook, the one we're using for our course, it gives you enough of this to talk about that is embedded in the book so that when you go outside you can actually look at it for real. So keeping it alive, it's one of the things with students, right? We have to make things applied, because the one thing, nobody's ever going to remember all the geometry or algebra or English rules or history. We don't remember all these things. But what we have to do is have a big picture view of them and see how to apply these skills and see how to learn them or relearn them as we need them. That's the point. The point of education is to learn to get educated on whatever we need, whenever we need it. So we have a geometry course that takes care of this, that is super, super helpful. It is based upon Harold Jacobs geometry. We put it to a course on video. It is, while it's geometry, which is the cross between, here we're kind of down through K through 12 math, and then we got some algebra, and then moving up to the higher level stuff such as algebra 2 and trig. Geometry is kind of that glue in the middle where you're making the transition, and it because it's so much embedded in the shapes, applied algebra, and then the logic that goes with it is it wasn't the way I was taught it. I'll just say, all I remember was there were shapes, and I didn't know why we were doing these proofs. So geometry is not about memorizing this. It's not even about memorizing the shapes. I know there looks like to be that, but it's about how do we see the world and how can we see it differently. So check out down below. We'll have our link to our geometry course. Everything is online. We answer questions and give support. So if we can help, let us know at support@AskDrCallahan.com.